Okay, it looks like we're live now. Sorry, everyone who was waiting on us to start. We were running a little bit late. But as y'all know, I'm Tim Aiden. He is Ellie Moretta Felice. You probably know him for his 56-17 score predictions in our Friday prediction roundup during the football season. Also, head basketball writer for BSD. But Ellie, how are we doing?
I'm doing okay. I just came back from the gym, so I had my good sweat and ready to talk some Penn State football.
There you go. And as I mean, I may have mentioned, but Patrick Kerbor had other issues tonight, so Ellie was generous enough to come fill in, play the Patrick role for us here. So good to have you though, Ellie. And we'll start off. You know the biggest news, kind of breaking in a way, but safety KJ Winston is out with a long term injury, as James Franklin described it in his Wednesday night post practice session with the media. Obviously, Franklin never goes into detail on what the problem is with somebody, and he doesn't. It sounds like it's not season ending, because if it was, he would just come out and say that. But long term, obviously not a good sign going forward. And who knows? I know he's got very good NFL draft prospects for next spring. So I would personally be surprised if we see him in a Nittany Lion uniform again on the field. But just, I mean, how do you see? How does this affect the season going forward? Considering he was, you know, not only the best safety, but maybe argue one of our best defensive players.
Yeah, that's very disappointing news to hear. It This is one of the times where it can be frustrating to not get specifics from James Franklin. I did notice that Franklin, especially this season, started sort of late last season, but into this season, he actually stopped confirming whether an injury is season ending anymore. So now he only says it's a short term or long term injury. So now you don't even know if an injury is a season ending injury or if it's a couple of week injury, because it's either long term or short term, which obviously it's the coach's new way to game the system. So with that rant out of the way, things started to kind of make sense in the immediate press conference after the game against Bowling Green. He was kind of coy with details in the press conference, right? I believe on Monday, he made some comments about how young people will need to um, basically like get ready, and now we understand why. He didn't say on Monday exactly what the prognosis was going to be. He said he was going to tell us today, and he did. Um, I am hoping that long term really means he'll be back by USC. Um, and at
Yeah.
worst, he'll be back by Ohio State, because I do think that while at least for the next 3 weeks with Kent State, Illinois, and UCLA, I think Penn State will be okay with what they have on defense. Um, they will need KJ Winston for USC. They will not need KJ Winston for Wisconsin based on what Alabama just did. Um, but they will definitely need him for Ohio State. So even if we, I mean, I don't want to speculate, which is the reason James Franklin doesn't talk about injuries, is so that people don't speculate. But if we are able to get him back by USC, that would be ideal. If that is not possible, by Ohio State would be ideal. And yes, as the chat is talking about, Dayon Lane is going to be next man up.
Yep. True
It's
freshman.
the other thing that I immediately think about is King Max starting for Alabama right now?
You know what? That is a very good question. Why don't we look that up real quick?
It was a record. It was a rhetorical question. He's not. Um, so
He has
this
one
is
scored
how.
tackle on the year. I just looked it up.
So this is how quickly things can go, and bygones are bygones. But it's funny how like playing time was the stated reason for transferring, and literally in game 3 he would have been one of the 3 starters of safety had he stayed, but he did not. So now Dayon Lane gets to have king max minutes, and hopefully hopefully we as the outside observers are making a much bigger deal about KJ's absence than maybe we should be, and the defense ends up being just fine. Obviously there's going to be a step back because a player of his caliber is doesn't get there by accident, but the hope is that what we lose by not having him on the field, we can make up in other ways. Maybe Abdul Carter starts to uh, get into more comfortable into his role at defensive end. Maybe Tony Rojas actually reps people when he tackles them moving forward. And maybe the uh, backup linebackers start performing a little better. So like and not to get too off course here, but like maybe the other thing that happens is that we don't need to have a top 2 defense like Penn State had to in 2023, because the offense is actually doing its job. That would be my ideal answer. But to kind of wrap my thoughts up here on KJ Winston, I sure hope he's not out for the season, and we'll get to see him back at some point in the future.
Our pal Lando who's been doing work in the comments. Appreciate the interaction, Lando. More pressure in the front seven to disrupt. I mean, I think there's always been pressure in the front seven to disrupt, and frankly, I mean, there's the first couple of games have been rather disappointing, especially for the D line. Everyone expected them to be able to generate some pressure on their own, and they haven't really been able to do that much. We've Tom Allen's had to dial up some blitzes of his linebackers and safeties in order to really get some pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So I mean, it just makes it all the more urgent. I mean, I guess it's like saying more pressure, but I mean, there's already I don't know how much more pressure there could be on the front seven to disrupt, but it's always been there. But I guess maybe it's dialed up to 11 now instead of 10. But yeah, my initial thoughts when reading news about KJ was what's it gonna those USC and Ohio State games just got a hell of a lot harder if he's not available for either one of those, considering those are the 2 teams in the schedule with dangerous passing attacks. And of course, a guy like Winston can also help you out and run support too. So, you can't completely discount him against teams that favor running the ball like Wisconsin. And that's not to say that the Wisconsin game suddenly gotten a lot tougher, because frankly, watching them against Bama, I'm thinking that game may not be as difficult as we initially imagined it might be. But of course, we're talking about a game that's at the end of October. So who knows where either team's going to be by that point. But yeah, you hopefully, like I said, Ellie, I hope you're right that long term is just maybe it means he's just out for a month, that kind of long term, as opposed to being effectively done for the season and shutting it down and just focusing on getting healthy for the NFL draft combine. I really hope we get to see him play in a Penn State uniform a few more times before he goes off to the pros. But I guess time will tell on that one. But like Lando said in the comments, it's Dewan Lane's turn to shine. So they'll be turning to the true freshman this weekend against Kent State. And speaking of which, Kent State, um, that's the next opponent on the schedule. We've enjoyed a nice little bye week last week. Uh, I'm sure we all needed it after that Bowling Green game. So, but now we're back to some actual game action, and I think first of all we should start off by saying, yeah, Kent State they are not Bowling Green. In fact, they're one of, if not maybe the worst team in FBS right now. Just go over the schedule. 55-24 pasting at Pitt in their season opener. They followed it up with a 23-17 loss at home to FCS St. Francis of PA, which is about, for those of you not familiar, that's a small school, Catholic school, about an hour west of State College in the Altoona, Johnstown area. They're let's just say this is not North Dakota State we're talking about. This is like a middling FCS program that even a team like Penn State, you would expect they should beat them by a couple of touchdowns. But nope, they had to go and lose that one. And then they go on the road last week to Tennessee and get absolutely pasted 71-zip. It was in a game where they were trailing 65-zip at halftime. And apparently, I guess the officials or Tennessee, they were offering to play reduced the time for the third and fourth quarters and maybe play with a running clock just to finish out the game quicker. And Kent State declined. So I guess kudos to Kent State for, taking it like men. But it's the point I'm just trying to illustrate is this is a bad team. They are not going to come out and shock the fans and jump out to some 2-score lead early on. They don't have the dudes to do it. There's no 6-year starter who had played in a couple Power Four conferences like Connor Bazelak did. They don't have a Harold Fannin Jr. at tight end or a couple or any like solid running backs like a Terrian Stewart. I guess Stewart didn't play against Penn State, but they had a couple of good running backs. They don't really have anything like that. If I do look at their stats, scoring offense wise, they're 127th out of 134 teams in FBS. Defensively, they're dead last in scoring defense, 134th, giving up almost 50 points a game on average. So needless to say, LA, this is a team where I would expect, Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, those, the usual suspects, they should be able to cook early and often. This is a game that, you would hope that Penn State should be able to put this one away by halftime. And I think the defense comes out and, with that Bowling Green game still fresh in their minds, they want to just come out and show people, hey, that first half against Bowling Green was a fluke. We're going to show you just how good we really are. We're going to hold these guys to 0 points. So this is a game where I really hope, it's over at halftime and you can get the backups playing pretty much the entire second half, which, we were hoping would be the case against Bowling Green. But yeah, just curious your thoughts about Kent State. looks like we're having some technical difficulties here.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good. So as I was saying, St. Francis is 1-2. Two of its losses are to not elite FCS teams. So St. Francis beat Kent State on the road 23-17, the only time Kent State has not allowed at least 50 points. This opponent could not have come at a better time. With the news of KJ Winston being out, they need to figure out what they're going to do on defense. I do think, kind of to go a little bit into what we're just talking about, I do think that we might see a change in philosophy for the defense. Instead of playing more man, which is what they were doing in the first two games, they're probably going to go more zone to kind of make up for the absence of Winston on the back. This, hopefully, I agree. Whether I saw one of the comments asking if they're going to cover, I would be very surprised if Penn State does not cover the 48.5 or 49.5.
48.5, 49.5. I got to see what the line is. Actually, let's Google Penn State line.
Yeah. I don't expect 71 points, but at the same time, if I had to pick a score right now, I'd be the same as Delaware last year, 63-7. The Penn State, the thing with Kent State is that teams are scoring almost by accident on them. So even when Penn State stops trying, they're going to keep scoring. This is going to be an opportunity on offense for all of those receivers that we've been asking about. Why aren't they involved? It's very likely that they get involved. You're going to see Liam Clifford. You're going to see Julian Fleming. You're going to see, well, you're probably not going to see Caden Saunders because he's probably still hurt. But you're going to see a lot more combinations of the receiver core. You're probably going to see how healthy Khalil Dinkins is. We saw some of him against Bowling Green, but apparently he wasn't 100%. He's probably at 100% now. You're going to see Luke Reynolds with the news that Rapplier is hurt and out for a long-term injury, which really just means out for the season. So you're going to see a lot of combinations on offense. And then on defense, we're going to see what the changes in philosophy are going to be. I don't think we're going to see Manny Diaz's style of aggression and misdirection. That's not how Tom Allen runs his defenses. So I actually, when thinking about that question of like, is the line going to get more pressure? I don't think that they won't, but I don't think we're going to see the level of aggression and exotic blitzes that we saw with Manny Diaz. But what we probably will see shift is, as I said earlier, we're probably going to shift back into more zone coverage because which is basically what they did in the second half of Bowling Green, right? They were playing more man and they were getting burned in the first half. The second half, they went more zone and they started getting more turnovers. They started getting more 3-and-outs. We're probably going to see more of that in this game. And we're probably going to see a big rotation of just about anyone who has either a yellow or a green light to play is going to play in this game. Because at this point, knowing what we know today, not knowing anything more than that, we need that replacement or group of people who will replace KJ Winston's production. We need to build, we need to see more depth being built on at the linebacker position especially. And as to go along with that, defensive line pressure. We need to see more improvement on that front. So I expect a lot of combinations, and I do not expect them in the second half. I think we're gonna see a lot of things put on tape on offense for the upcoming opponents, and we're gonna see a lot of combinations of defense, and we're gonna see them right off the bat.
Yeah, and so as for your, I guess you're laying out a prediction for the game. In my head, I'm thinking something. I wouldn't say it's a final prediction. I'll put it up on Friday, but I'm thinking in my head something like it'd be like 52-3. I mean, I think a shutout is very much on the table too, if you ask me. And if Kent State does score a touchdown, it'll be in garbage time against like the walk-ons, so in the final few minutes. So it's I just think like I said, I think defense just has they have a lot they want to prove out there. They want to prove that they're more like what they were against West Virginia the whole game, and in the second half against Bowling Green. And I guess I guess as far as like whether it's Tom Allen was playing zone or man at first, it's to me, I thought it seemed like he was more playing like, or it's kind of more zone, or just playing safeties like his got corners and safeties like 10 yards back. It kind of reminded me of the like Tom Bradley era, the whole bend but don't break thing, except they were breaking early on. But I think, my hope is he realized it seemed like he got more aggressive in the second half. And I'm not saying, and no one's mistaken him for Manny Diaz in terms of aggressiveness, but my hope is he can strike a balance between like he's somewhere in between Tom Bradley and Brent Pry and Manny in terms of aggressiveness. And so we'll hopefully we'll see. I think they should probably be able to man up on these guys and hold them in check. So I mean, Kent State doesn't exactly have burners at any of their skill positions. So, it's a game where I think they have a chance to really show up, look impressive, maybe even pitch a shutout. And of course, the offense. I don't know about you, Ellie. I'm not feeling concerned really at all about them. Kent State especially is very susceptible to ground attacks. Every team they played so far just run all over them. So I think I could see Singleton and Allen both hitting 100 yards in a day. I think we'll also see a lot of Cam Wallace and maybe even some Quentin Martin in the second half, which will be great for them because those two seem like the heir apparents for the Singleton Allen combination. Are there any other guys on offense that you're curious to see?
Other than the tight ends, I want to see how that rotation goes. Other than
not to interrupt, Ellie, but I meant to say, you mentioned Khalil Dinkins earlier. During that same press conference, Franklin had where he mentioned Winston's injury. He did say that Franklin, he expects Lincoln's to be, quote, a real weapon. So that's a nice, promising thing to be saying.
Yeah, indeed. I think at this point, right, we know what we have with Tyler Warren, but Penn State, basically for the entirety of James Franklin's tenure, has had more than one tight end that is capable. Even though one is usually the feature tight end, there's always at least one other that serves as a complement, especially when we want to run two tight end sets. So outside of Dinkins, I want to see how healthy he is. I want to see which other receivers are going to get targets. I also want to see what Wallace will do, because Trey Wallace had some targets and I think had a catch or two against Bowling Green, but he definitely was a lot lower on the production scale than he was against West Virginia. So I'm definitely curious for that. I want to see Drew Aller. Um, Not because there's any question as to what he'll do, but I know it's only been 2 games, but there's a definite and clear difference in how he's running this offense versus how he ran the offense last season. He was quite tentative basically throughout the year in 2023, and he seems a lot more in command. So I want to see how he comes out. But yeah, that's kind of what I. It's really hard to kind of get into specifics when the opponent is like will basically give no resistance. So we expect everything's going to work, but we can still learn from some of the deficiencies that are there. For example, so far through 2 games, this offense is looking a little 2016-ish in how it's a little bit feast or famine. It's like it's either a bomb for a touchdown, either on the ground or through the air, or it's a 3-and-out. So like I want to see a little bit more. Okay, can we, if we're not going to score a touchdown on this drive, can we at least get 2 or 3 first downs so that the time of possession isn't so glaringly in the opponent's favor? So like those are some things that I kind of want to see, which again, it gets a little tricky in that, yes, I want to see those things, but I also expect them to happen because it's against Kent State. No disrespect to the Golden Flashes. So it's going to be, for me at least, a little bit of a, I'm only looking for things to be concerned about, because under 99% of circumstances, these things should happen. Now, if they don't, then it's time where I start worrying, okay, well, if they can't do it against Kent State, are they going to do it against Illinois? So that's kind of where I'm at with the offense as a whole and with those 2 positions in particular.
Yeah, I think this might be a chance for, like I said, Wallace to get back on track, or I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I might see other guys like maybe Julian Fleming, or act like, let's see if Liam Clifford can record his first catch or 2 of the season. I remember how much he was getting hyped during preseason camp. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah, I do believe that he got hurt right before the season started. So he has been basically coming back on track. So I'm wondering how close to 100% he is. They did increase his snaps against Bowling Green. Now, with the benefit of a bye week after week 2, I'm hoping that he's close to 100%. Because even now, the way the season has gone, people are still talking about how like Clifford is one of the main weapons. We just haven't been able to see it because he's been hurt. So I want to see it, right? Because even last season, I think a lot of people, because everyone, right? Like it wasn't just him, but like everyone, I'm gonna be mean for a second, because everyone sucked at the wide receiver group last year. People kind of didn't really pay much attention to the contributions that Liam himself made. There's a lot of third downs that he converted into first downs on drives where Penn State was at risk of letting the game, especially I remember one off the top of my head against Illinois, where at a time where it was still tight. So like if Clifford was able to elevate his game beyond just being the reliable receiver, like third down receiver, and more of a down to down receiver. You pair that up with Omari Evans being the deep ball threat, and then Trey Wallace being basically the all around guy that you rely on. That's, again, couple that with the running game being as effective as it is, kind of going back to that 2022 level of you have Katron Allen who can get you 13 yards basically in his sleep, and then Nicholas Singleton who will basically just score a touchdown if you look the other way. You pair that with 3 solid receivers, and all of a sudden you have an offense that's really efficient and can make up for any deficiencies that we might see in the defense without KJ Wisdom in the fold.
Absolutely. The offense definitely, is still a work in progress. Even though and I'll say I think it's further along than it was at this point in 2016 season. I mean, it helps, of course, when you have an experienced quarterback and a guy with an arm like Drew Aller, as opposed to when Moorhead took over and had, first year starter Trace McSorley to work, and a better O-line, I would say, than in 2016. So those help. But definitely, like I said, there's a lot they can work on, and not just the defensive side, but offensively, those are some things we like to see. But it's basically, I guess, bottom line is we want to see Penn State just dominate all facets of the game. This game should be over at halftime. Should be a stress-free game. Knocking all the wood, no injuries, nothing. Yeah. So, that's about all I can say, Kent State. Unless you got any other thoughts that come to mind, Ellie.
I think the last thing is Kent State coaches, please, if they offer 10-minute quarters again in the second half, please take them. Take the running clock. You're still getting paid the full amount. Just do it for all of us. Do it for our sakes. And thank you. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Well said. So a little bit of time left over. So we'll do a little look at some of the bigger games happening in the Big Ten and around college football this weekend. But Friday night, Illinois and Nebraska, 8:00 on Fox, in a battle of top 25 teams, just as we expected, Ellie.
Yep.
But that'll be that's going to be one I'll definitely have an eye on, especially with Illinois being Penn State's opponent next weekend and their Big Ten opener. We'll get a chance to see how they look against a quality team. I mean, Nebraska's you saw them beat Kansas at home, which at the time looked like a nice win over a ranked team. Although you have to wonder if maybe Kansas just is not going to end up being that good this year. But this will tell us a lot about both teams. I think, Nebraska wants to prove they definitely belong in the top 25, for the remainder of the season, or at least, until they get to, the Ohio State game. And Illinois, of course, trying to, prove their win over Kansas wasn't some fluke. So, it'll be interesting to see, but I think it'll be, definitely be a lot to have on tape to study with Illinois, I would think, since they're going to have to, open up the playbook against a team like Nebraska. But I just want to definitely keep an eye on. Other Big Ten games another one I'm keeping an eye on, especially, is USC at Michigan. We all know Michigan defense still pretty damn good. Offense, different story, especially the passing attack. Sharon Moore's made a change at quarterback. He's got Alex Orji starting now. And, while he's not much of a passer himself, he at least does have a set of wheels. So he brings another running threat to an offense that really just is lacking in some playmakers. So, but I'm really curious to see how that USC offense looks against a defense like Michigan's. I think that'll be the toughest defense they'll have faced so far. No disrespect to LSU, but I think we're gonna learn a lot more about USC in this one. So they have to go on the road to Michigan. They're starting to get into the heart of Big Ten play here, so can kind of give us a glimpse of maybe what we can expect when Penn State goes and plays them. Other game, of course, you got Iowa, Minnesota. It's a battle for what's that trophy called? It's like a pig. Floyd of Rosedale. Floyd of Rosedale. Yeah, I came back to me. Yeah, that's 7:30 on NBC. That could be an interesting one if you like good old fashioned Big Ten battles. What's that?
First to 7 points wins.
Yeah, first to 7 points wins. You're probably right about that one.
The only way to score is via field goals and safeties.
Yes. Maybe we'll get a 6-4 game there or something. They got I don't know about you, Ollie, but I'm also curious to see Michigan State, Boston College. Our old pal Bill O'Brien doing a pretty good job in his first year at BC. They'll get a Michigan State team that's. I guess I'm not sure what to make of them. I thought they were going to struggle this year, and they didn't look so hot in their win over Florida Atlantic, but then they looked pretty dynamic against in a nice road win at Maryland, and then they beat up on Prairie View A&M last week. So this will be a nice test for Jonathan Smith, and a chance for if they come out there with a win, it'll definitely get them a little more hype going into the Big Ten slate, and also it puts them in a good position. They'll be 3-1. They just got to win 3 games to go bowling, which would be a great accomplishment in year 1 for Jonathan Smith.
Indeed. I'm also interested in Northwestern at Washington, probably for selfish reasons. Washington just came out of the loss to Washington State. They didn't look as bad as I thought they would. I legitimately thought Washington State, the way they've been beating teams leading up to that game, I thought the Cougars were going to run away with it, but they actually didn't. So I want to see what kind of team Washington is. I'm also interested in Rutgers at Virginia Tech.
Yes.
Again, for reasons. Brent Pry is the Virginia Tech coach. He started out his 2024 campaign in embarrassing fashion. Rutgers is, of all the teams who benefited from the divisions going away, Rutgers by far has benefited the most. They do not play any of the top 4 teams, 5, because I don't think they play USC. I don't think they do. So
they do. They go to I think.
Oh yeah. You're right.
I think it's I think it's maybe in October, but it's 11 o'clock Eastern kick on Friday night at USC.
Right. So I guess at the time we didn't expect USC to be any good. So they played one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten because now Michigan and USC have traded places. So I want to see if Rutgers beating up on Howard and whoever else, an equal quality opponent is more Rutgers, taking care of business against lower competition, or if they're actually going to be really good this season. They return a lot. And I'm also kind of, so here's the thing. I wanna go into another mini rant. USC, I am interested to see what they do with Michigan. But I think after seeing what South Carolina did to LSU and how basically the officials took that game away from the Gamecocks, I'm not putting as much stock on USC beating LSU as I had after it happened. So I actually am very curious to see how USC does against a defense that is inarguably much better than what LSU put out on the field. Now, at the same time, I just don't think Michigan has an offense that can, like, they're basically Iowa. Like, they're basically the 2023 version of Iowa. They have a good defense that'll keep things close-ish, but they just cannot do anything on offense. And we heard for so long during the offseason that, like, Alex Orji was the heir apparent, and that the entire roster was architected with him being the starter as the kind of like preconceived assumption. So much so that Michigan didn't even bother to recruit a receiver during the spring portal window. And then it turns out that he can't pass. So Davis Warren ends up winning the job. So now you have a Michigan team that can pass no matter who is at quarterback, and a defense that, just like Iowa, is really good, but is spending so much time on the field that any team with a capable offense is probably going to basically shut them out. And I mean, we saw the Texas game, so we don't yet have to go further into that. So I'm curious to see how USC will fare against a team with a much better defense, but also a team that both wants to run and has no choice but to run. Because the other part of the LSU game that's quite important in retrospect is that LSU was running the ball pretty well until, I think it's Emory Jones. I forget his name, but Emory Jones went out. And that's kind of when USC was able to lean on LSU. So now what do they do against a team that's not even going to pretend that they're going to have an air attack, and they're just going to lean on the run? So I still expect USC to win, but if that game is close, it actually tells us a lot more about the Trojans than it does about Michigan.
Yeah, all very good points you make there. I think one more game, non-Big Ten game I'm curious to see is Tennessee at Oklahoma. You know, Tennessee just, you know, that offense against, you know, the Oklahoma team, which they're 15th right now. But they haven't really played anybody. Well, I guess they played Tulane last week. It was decent. Beat them by 15 points. Beat Houston by 4 points the week before. So we'll see if they can hang with the Volunteers. I don't know what the line is on this game. At
first like 7.5. Tennessee 7.5.
7.5. I mean, that sounds about right. So I mean, you know, we'll see if they can conjure up some Sooner magic there and pull the upset. But
I will say that's a really good game because it's kind of the same thing that we're looking at with Michigan and USC. Tennessee has been murdering everyone, and their defense is a lot better than it was last year. I'm not convinced NC State is any good. So you're left with a Tennessee team that, you know, they're doing exactly what you expect of a team that's good against competition that isn't. And then you have an Oklahoma team that, is struggling a little bit on offense, but like their defense is still really good. And something clicked in the second half against Tulane. They were struggling with Tulane, but then in the second half, they just kind of they gave up trying to make Jackson Arnold a pocket passer.
Jackson Arnold, yep.
They just let him run wild, and suddenly the game is no longer I think 7-point game at the time. They win by 2 touchdowns. So I'm really curious to see that game. I don't actually think it's going to be the blowout that people expect. And that's not to say Tennessee is not as good as their results so far, which I think people are underestimating Oklahoma, and I think that game is going to be really close.
Yeah, we shall find out. But we have 45 minutes on this. I think that's enough for a Kent State preview. So actually, Ellie and I will be back Saturday shortly after the game is over. So it's 3:30 kick. So sometime between 6:30 and 7, we'll be back here live, breaking it all down for you, since Patrick will actually be at the game in attendance. Ellie, once again, thanks for joining us, and the rest of you, we'll see you on Saturday after the game.
Of course. Thanks for having me.